People without documentation who live and work here are among the most vulnerable people in our country. Today, as in the past, immigrants are creating prosperity and enrichment for this nation. In fact, the U.S. food supply system depends heavily on immigrants. Nearly 3/4 of all U.S. hired farm workers who harvest the majority of our country's fruits and vegetables are immigrants, most of whom are undocumented. Unfortunately, despite their contribution, immigrant laborers face barriers to opportunities and discrimination, all of which increase their chances of living in poverty. Immigrants without documentation have food insecurities rates twice that of the overall U.S. population. So the people being hired to crop our fields are only making about $10,000 to $12,500 a year. There are no mandated benefits like health insurance, overtime, or sick pay. There have been little improvement for migrant workers since the documentary Harvest of Shame, which first aired Thanksgiving Day in the 1960s. The film depicted white and Black American migrant workers living in filth, despair, and extreme poverty. There was a public uproar regarding the treatment being dealt towards these fellow Americans. Latino day laborers work in the informal economy in jobs that are often too dirty, too dangerous, and too poorly paid for local workers. Day labor work is difficult and includes significant abuse of worker rights, routine denial of payment for work, dangerous working conditions, employer abuse, as well as poorly paid and inconsistent employment opportunities. Day laborers are generally employed to do the most dangerous jobs in situations where health and safety codes are often not enforced and have high incidence of workplace injuries. They are also often exposed to chemicals and toxic emissions and faulty equipment, as well as lack of safety training. According to the first and only survey of day laborers, uncovered that wage theft and unpaid earned wages is the most common abuse day laborers experience. In fact, nearly half of all day laborers surveyed nationally have been denied payment. The survey also revealed that out of the 2,660 workers, 44% were denied food and water breaks, 32% worked overtime without receiving overtime pay, 28% were threatened by their employer with physical or verbal abuse, 27% had been abandoned at the work site and made to find their own way home, and 18% reported being violently victimized by an employer. Undocumented Mexicans receive effectively no wage premium for working in dangerous settings, whereas most other groups do. A professor of policy and analysis management in Cornell's College of Human Ecology. Another recent report established in the May issue of the Annals of the American Academy of Political and Social Science found that more than 30% of undocumented migrant laborers in the U.S. are victims of labor trafficking or recruitment of a person for labor through force, fraud, or coercion, for involuntary servitude, debt bondage, or even slavery, and 55% of victims of other labor abuses. For instance, if an employer is treating a worker unfairly, a worker who speaks up to their boss can be threatened with deportation. This significantly takes away their rights to stand up for themselves and advocate for their working conditions. Threats of detention and deportation add to the psychological stress of a job that is already unstable by its very nature, varying season by season and location to location. As a recent report by the National Employment Law Project shows, immigration policies intended to stop employers from hiring undocumented workers have instead allowed unscrupulous employers to abuse workers, dodge immigration and labor laws. Employers commonly manipulate the dysfunctional immigration system to intimidate workers, documented and undocumented alike, who organize for better working conditions. Today, guest workers are denied one of the most fundamental rights offered by the American society, the right to change jobs. This is not an immigration issue, this is a human rights issue that needs to be addressed. In this case, the ends do not justify the means. Thank you.